classes and how we can create our own classes. So classes are essentially like a template that describes the state of an object. An object is an instance of a class. So for example, an instance so for example, an object would be like creating a string where I just say string str equals to new string hello world. This is another way to create a string, by the way. And you can see that this is an object right here, and we can use the object in different ways, such as printing it. So today we're going to create our own class and also use objects of these classes. So we're going to create a dog class. So classes usually have a couple of things in them. They usually have private fields, and these only belong to the object inside that class. So if I try to access the private field outside, I would not be allowed to. Other things that we have are constructors. We also have methods too. So these are some of the main things in like a class. So to create a class, we can just go down here, and outside of this right here, which itself is also a class, we can declare class dog like that. Now, let's first go over our private fields. So private fields are fields that essentially belong to the class. So nothing outside of it can access it. So I can do something like private int age. And generally you want your private fields to be descriptive of the class, as you can use and reuse the class for different purposes. And I can also do something like private string name. Now, how do we declare what these are? We can use what is called a constructor. So to make a constructor, we can do public dog, and then we want to say, okay, what do we want in our construct? What do we want to take in? So we can take in an integer as age and a string as name. So, and then to declare what these are in correspondence to this, I'll simply do this.age is equal to age. So whenever we declare this object, like I do right here, I'll say new string, and I'll pass in these arguments, which is what I'm taking in here, and I'm setting these arguments, and I'm setting our private fields to these arguments. And I can do this.name is equal to name. Now, if I do something such as dog d is equal to new dog, and then I want to first have my age, so I'll use like 2, and then the name, which I'll just use Joe. Then you can see that we created our own object. Now typically for our class we also want to use what is called a default constructor. Default constructors essentially are if the user doesn't provide any information or any arguments, we just set it to what it should default to. Now we can just do public dog and then no arguments, and then we'll just say this.age is equal to 1, and this.name is equal to something like Jimmy. And now if you see, if I put no arguments here and run this, we just created a dog with using this default constructor. Now, we also want to use methods into our class. So the methods would be things that can, like, the object can use. For example, we usually like to use getter and setter methods for private variables. So I can do public int get age, and for our methods, they would generally be in the form of public, because anyone can access it, then the return type, so public return type, which in my case would be an int, and the name of the method. And at this point, I would just do some operations, and then in the end, I would return what I want to return. So in this case, I'll just return this.age. Now, if I come here, I can then do system.out.println, then d.getAge. And what this should do is it should print out 1, which is declared in this default constructor right here to 1, and our object d is calling getAge, which is returning our age. And I can also do something like a setter method. This will set our age. And then I will essentially be taking in an argument as the age to set, and I'll just do this.age is equal to age. Now, if I then do d.setAge, and then I'll just do 5, and then I can print out our age. Now what this should do is, it's because I got that error because I was trying to print something out when I'm not returning anything in that method. So it wouldn't know what to print out. Now I set the age to 5, and I will print out 5. Another important method is the toString method. The toString method is essentially what the object calls when we try to print it. For example, if I just try to print D right now, we're probably going to get something that we can't understand. Dog at, and then the address. However, this really doesn't mean too much to us as we can't really understand it. So instead we can create a method called the toString method. And make sure to make that the method is exactly like this. Now we can print something such as, now we can return what we wanted to print out, we call a print line, and we're just going to use return this.name and see what happens. Now we get Jimmy. So here's another important thing, is where we add strings together, called string concatenation. And now I can add something such as this.name plus is, and then I can even use our methods that we create right here. So getAge, and then plus years old. Oh, it's because I didn't add it right here. But now you can see I have this.name is, and then we use our method that we created, so 5, and then years old. Alright, so finally let's just review what we learned today. So today we learned what are classes and what are objects. So a class is a template that describes the state of an object, and an object is essentially an instance of a class. So the elements of our class are, we have 3 main things that we learned today. Private fields, and these are things that belong to the class, and they describe the state of the object. Constructors, and constructors are a special method that we call when we create an object. This initializes the private fields. And we have methods. And a method is a portion of code to perform action. Usually we have methods to shorten our code and also so that our objects can call it. So let's look at the structure of a class. So the class starts with class name. And then we have our private fields, such as private and then the data type or the variable type, and then the name. And then we have a constructor, and this is what we call when we create the object. So public, and then our class name, and then we take in the arguments that we want to set to initialize our private fields with, and these will go as a variable type, then the name, and then if you want more, you can just do comma variable type name, and then we will instantiate the private fields with this dot age is equal to our argument name. And then finally we have our public methods, and these go along public, and then our return type, and then the name. And if we want to have arguments just like our constructor, we can use int age. However, in this we won't, and then we will use return and then this dot age. And a special type of method is the toString method, which is essentially called whenever we want to print. Thanks for watching this video on programming in Java.